Conversations with leading experts in enterprise resource planning. Evolving ERP. Powered by Insight Jam.
Welcome to episode 2 of Evolving ERP, Insight Jam's place for all things enterprise resource planning. We're back again with, of course, the maestro, Dan Aldridge, back for episode 2. Thanks for coming on again, Dan. And for the first time, Vinnie Mirchandani. Welcome to the show, Vinnie.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Dan, why don't you, in case folks didn't check out episode number 1, which I encourage you to do, please go ahead and like this episode, subscribe, and get back on that first episode of Evolving ERP. But Dan, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself and give them a taste of what they're getting into?
Sure. So I'm a career ERP guy from starting in manufacturing back in the 90s. Actually, I worked for a company called Bond, which came in for later on after the turn of the century. And I worked at a variety of different manufacturing companies doing ERP implementations and transformation projects throughout the 2000s. Carrier, Grove Cranes, all kinds of different manufacturing companies. And I've worked for various Infor partners, for Priority Software, who's a competitor, and now with PCG.
And of course, Dan is very active on LinkedIn. If you're looking for ERP content, check him out on there. It's the place to go. Vinnie, let the people know a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, Ryan, thank you for having me, Dan. Look forward to this. I'm an industry analyst. I spent a few years at Gartner, but my industry analysis started at the employment before that with Pricewaterhouse, the consulting firm. So I started implementing software. We didn't call it ERP then in the late 80s, around the world. And then when I came back to the US, they said, the market's just taking off. Client service software is becoming more prevalent. Why don't you set up a little Gartner group internally? So that's what I did. I had a group for about 3 years, and then I got a recruiting call from Gartner saying, hey, if you want to do research, come do it for a real research firm. So I went there for 5 years, and boy, that was amazing journey, because everybody was camping to get Y2K solutions. And oh my God, Gartner used to get a lot of queries. Clients would say, I'm looking at PeopleSoft, I'm looking at Bond, I'm looking at Oracle. In half an hour, give us your perspectives. Or we've decided on Oracle, what integrator should we pick? Or give us some negotiation points. And I did, in those 5 years, 10,000 of those queries. Okay. So you were getting a feel for the market, you had your finger on the pulse like nobody else did. And after that, I did a startup, which didn't go too far because we ran into the .com bomb, but it was also around enterprise software projects. And then in 2004, I started my present company, Deal Architect, which is a small analyst firm. We're also a publishing firm, and we're an advisory firm. And we've advised clients on a whole bunch of ERP angles, automation, increasingly AI, and so on. So, sorry, that's a long introduction, but
no problem at all. Yeah, that's you're already digging into the history, and that's one of the things I'm sure we want to cover. Your guys' backgrounds, where you're coming from, where you see ERP going. So I'm gonna hop out of the way here, not being an ERP expert, and Dan and Vinnie, you guys take it away.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. So, Vinnie, I wanted to dig into a couple of things. First of all, it's amazing career. And I started following you probably 15 years ago. And Gartner has survived as being the authority basically in the analyst scene. And the fact that you were there in the early days is tremendous. And I heard that you had a term early days called BOPS. And so there's several terms that have come up in the evolution of ERP. Can you explain that to me a bit?
Absolutely. I was part of the group that coined the term ERP at Gartner. So I'm carbon dating myself. But those were heady days. And we could see, because people were spending so much on ERP, right? Part of the Y2K, partly because the clients, they were moving away from mainframe to client server. And so we coined a term BOPS, Bon, Oracle, PeopleSoft, SAP, and we added E, so it became BOPSy twins, right? And that was viewed as the industry leaders, technology industry leaders. IBM was on a down spiral, HP was on a down spiral, EDS was kind of languishing at that point. These 4 or 5 application vendors were the hot commodity in technology leadership. When you look at it now, about 15 years later, Jim Cramer on Wall Street Mad Money coined the term FANG, right? Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Okay, and now the hottest stocks and technology vendors are what I call the Magnificent Seven.
Yep, Magnificent Seven. Yep,
it's NVIDIA, it's Amazon, it's Alphabet, which includes Google, Meta, which includes Facebook, Tesla, and a few others. What's fascinating, Dan, is if you look at their valuations, okay, at least 5 of them, if not 6 of them, are over $1 trillion in market valuation. 3 of them are over $3 trillion. Okay, and when you look at the leadership of enterprise apps and services, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Accenture, very healthy companies. None of them is even 400 billion. Okay, so something has happened where these guys who were leaders at one point are still doing okay, and they look at each other and they feel good about each other, but frankly, they've lost their leadership. Okay, now, you can say, hey, look, Wall Street is, God knows what they smoke sometimes, but in general, they reflect customer buying patterns, because they reflect revenue and they reflect margin and so on. And I've seen in those 30 years, the SAPs, the Oracles, just basically miss out on so many opportunities because they think focus is good. We're doing well. Well, we can go through some of the big $1 trillion markets they've missed out on. If they had continued, there's no reason why they wouldn't be part of the Magnificent Seven. So each one of them is trying to get there, right? Because they want to have that valuation and that cachet, but it's going to take a lot of effort.
Yeah, and so you have you're an author, and you've written 9 books at this stage, and several of them were about SAP, SAP Nation books, very good books. And so you say that I guess these big ERP vendors, SAP being, of course, number one, have missed out on some opportunities. What are some of the opportunities that you think they've missed out on?
Well, why don't we do this? Let's talk positively. What are the opportunities for them, right? And then we could talk about the opportunities.
That's better.
Yeah. So, when you look at ERP, right? You came from the manufacturing world. It was an evolution of what was MRP. Okay. Then MRP 2. So it was very manufacturing oriented. But even in manufacturing, if you look at auto industry, right? Big customer for ERP. If you look at Tesla has revolutionized the industry because it goes direct to market. They don't have a dealer channel, right? Their BOM of an electrical vehicle is much smaller than that of a combustion engine.
Yes.
Right? It's much more technology components, right? Chips and sensors and God knows what all, right? And if you look at service, they're moving to a distributed service model where they'll actually come to your place and do stuff, right? So the industry has changed a lot. I don't think ERP has kept up with any of those trends, even in manufacturing. Now, when you look at the economy, broad economy, so utilities don't need MRP. They need usage capture and billing, right? They need a very, very extensive CapEx asset management solution. ERP doesn't, out of the box, do that.
Like an EAM type system.
If you look at banks, every industry has unique books of record, right? Banks have their own, insurance companies have claims processing and policy management and so on and so forth. ERP only reflects 20 or 25% of the economy, right? And they haven't verticalized enough. So that's one big opportunity. And the verticalization really accelerated in the last 4 or 5 years. a book I wrote for 2 SAP executives last year looked at that. Right? If you look at applications that became viable in the last 5 years, telemedicine in healthcare as a result of COVID, it's been around for 30 years, but nobody wanted to. I mean, you wanted to go in and see a doctor face to face. COVID forced us to start using telemedicine. Suddenly it's taken off. Right? If you look at retail, e-commerce has forced a level of returns that was never anticipated. You can't have people go into stores and say, hey, take my item back, and let the associate decide, should I take it back? Should I put it back on the store, on the shelf? What should I do with it? You need a very sophisticated returns process, returns logistics, and so on. Has become a very viable application in the last 3 or 4 years. Okay? So we found about 100 edge applications that have become necessary for utilities, EV charging, infrastructure management, and billing. Didn't need it 4 or 5 years ago. Now it's essential. Right? So the world is changing so fast. Verticals are changing so fast. The ERP really hasn't kept up with that. So that's one opportunity is, guys, quit just talking about manufacturing. Start looking at the broader economy. Now, some of them will say they're in the service sector. Honestly, they just use some HR or financial and PSC capability. They really haven't verticalized enough. That's opportunity one. Second opportunity is a very different globe. Around in the late 90s, early 2000s, Unicode standard became prevalent. The motto of Unicode is anybody in the world should be able to deal with their mobile phone or their computer in the language they are accustomed to. What an ambitious goal. Right? So Unicode supports about 150,000 characters, which tells you how many languages, how many scripts, the right to left, top to down scripts there are, right? How many of these do you think ERP vendors support? Very few, especially the US ones. Next
wave, languages you mean?
Languages, which means they need presence there and, support and so on. But what's really become important in the last few years is that was internationalization. Now we're looking at localization because many of these countries have their own statutory reporting requirements. They have unique taxes. They have unique e-invoicing. They have unique customs. The amount of practices and legal requirements now around the world is just mind-boggling. Well, it's an opportunity, right? Because companies have to comply with that. If your software can do it, you can play there. If you cannot, you cannot play there. So, and I didn't even mention payroll HR is another very, very
country-specific.
Yeah. So that's another big opportunity for vendors. It's a big challenge for U.S. vendors. U.S. vendors like to go into English-speaking countries and stay in the Western economy. Honestly, the emerging market is growing much quicker than either Europe or U.S. So if you don't broaden the horizons, you're going to miss out on that market, right? Because those guys aren't going to buy a U.S. payroll system. They want unique for their environment. So that's another big opportunity. Okay. A third one is, we tend to be very white-collar, automation focused. You came from manufacturing, right? There are robotics in every manufacturing plant. You go to an Amazon warehouse, there are robots running around, there are conveyor belts, next generation conveyor belts, next generation pickup, the forklifts and so on. All that needs to become part of the workflow because Amazon, the design was, let's take the work to the human, not have the human walk miles in the warehouse and carry back-breaking loads, right? So ERP doesn't reflect the world of automation that we have. And that's another big opportunity. And then the fourth thing is ERP has always been dependent on, you're a partner of Infor, right? You don't run up huge bills, but the big SAP partners certainly do, big Oracle partners certainly do. So automation of implementations is another big area that
it's a huge area, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity. You just have to, break out of the old mindset and say, we got to do this. Make some investment, look at the world differently. Now, you asked me, what did they miss, right? Let me give you 3 or 4 examples. So digital marketing, they talk about, we do CRM, we can support customer-facing activities. Guess who ran away with the digital marketing business? Google and Facebook, right? Even Salesforce and the CRM vendors didn't get that. If you look at IoT, the big industrial companies, GE, Siemens, and so on, basically capitalize on that. Every industrial manufacturing customer now is using IoT to come up with new bunch of maintenance and monitoring services and so on. So again, the ERP vendors did not really capitalize on it enough. You look at infrastructure, right? You look at what Microsoft's done with Azure. You look at what Google's done with their cloud and so on. The ERP vendors have been very allergic to capital investments. So they've missed out on infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, and now AI infrastructure that requires GPUs and so on. So, they've been very, very cautious in investments and looking at new markets. Well, then the new markets aren't going to wait for you, right? You slouch, you miss out on $1 trillion market. So they've missed out on a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree with you on the edge systems is a huge area where, hooking up with IoT devices and MES systems is a huge area in manufacturing anyway that they could take advantage of. And all that data, to mine that data, and also to use AI, I'll say it there, AI, to use AI with the robotics and with the automation in the factories, and then start anticipating things like a product mix that would be more efficient or more profitable for the company. And also the ESG component too, being able to look at a supply chain and find out what kinds of emissions and things like that through sensors that they're and polling their suppliers and even their customers in the value chain there to start to help with ESG initiatives, because that's something that's coming, and there's vendors springing up about that as well that are kind of eating the ERP vendors' lunch in a way with that kind of technology. And Brian Sommer has written about that as well in his book about ESG. So I think that's an opportunity that ERP vendors need to jump on.
Interestingly, Brian and I have gone back and forth on that. I am not a big ESG fan.
Okay.
I like the E part, but in the E part, it's become very politicized. Let's not dwell too long on it. But S&G, I'm not a very big. I think we've gotten into a lot of distractions when it comes to that. But let's not waste time on that.
Yeah. Well, but just on the topic of you mentioned automation and robotic process automation. Do you think that's an opportunity there that ERP vendors have need to take advantage of?
Let's go back to the Amazon example, right? If Jeff Bezos had called Larry Ellison in 2006 and said, we're going to be building some massive distribution centers, what can you give us? Larry would have given them a warehouse management solution in the cloud, right? Basically wouldn't have rethought what, if you've been to a distribution center of Amazon, there are miles and miles of conveyor belts. There are hundreds of Kiva robots zipping around that do all the picking and bringing to the packing station, right? The packing station, the employee doesn't move at all. Basically, they brought their scanners and their sensors and make sure what gets packed is accurate. And then it cuts for the person, tells them what size box to pick, and then cuts for the exact amount of tape to pack the box. He hands it off, it goes to a labeling machine, which then forwards it down the conveyor belts and goes to the loading dock. And the loading dock itself has configurations on how to best pack an Amazon truck. Right? So there's so much automation there. And everything is stored in AWS memory. It's called chaotic storage, where no human being knows where anything is, but it works. Right? So, but they basically rethought the whole process. Don't let the human waste time walking and carrying loads and all that. Let them do what they are best at. So we can get, we don't tire them out, and they can focus on checks and balances and so on. Buying a warehouse management system that was designed 20 years ago would not have done anything for them. I like to say the distribution centers run with about 3,000 to 4,000 employees now. If they had put on a traditional ERP-centric warehouse solution, it would be 10x the number of labor they would need. So
it would slow them down to a lot.
Dramatic improvement, right?
Yeah.
So I think but you have to rethink processes. See, unfortunately, ERP vendors have just taken a model from 20, 30 years ago, and they just move it forward. They keep re-architecting it for the cloud. They're re-architecting it now for AI and so on. They don't really rethink a process. I like to say we've been very blessed in an industry with some great enterprise architects. Larry's one, Gartner was another, Parker Harris at Salesforce is another. Okay,
The Yad
Bond is another. What we haven't had is business architects. Okay, we need a balance. We need the enterprise architect to have a mirror business architect who says, okay, do the technology re-architecting. I will do the business re-architecting. That's been missed at every opportunity in the last 30 years in our industry.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. And if you prefer to listen, please rate and review the Insight Jam podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out. Now, let's get back to the show.
I agree with you that the architecture part is definitely important. The enterprise architecture, in particular, when you're putting in these systems and things like that. I mean, I think probably Amazon is when I was thinking robotic process automation, I was thinking more in terms of a company that's running slower. It's not trying to track all the movements of the robots and things like that, right? They're making widgets. And they're shipping widgets, but they're a little bit more complicated in terms of bills of material and things like that. That would be the ones that would be more appropriate for today's ERP and today's warehouse management systems.
The Amazon warehouse model, a lot of smaller warehouses wanted to do that. They couldn't afford it, right? First of all, the scale was much smaller. You'll be surprised how many new robotic solutions have emerged for warehouses closer to urban locations, so they're much smaller, right? It's called micro fulfillment, and you'll be amazed at how many new generation robots, and they're sold on it as a service model. So you don't have to commit to 500 of those bots. You can buy 5 and then say, hey, Christmas is coming up, send me another 20 for 3 months. The model, it's been one of the most successful as a service products ever introduced. Warehouses,
to be seasonal. Yeah. So it's more on the distribution side, right? Not so much on the manufacturing. I was thinking more in terms of things like.
You look at manufacturing. You mentioned MES, right? I mean, there are robots doing a lot of stuff on the shop floor now, right? So integration with them. In fact, producing a proprietary version of that, which nobody stops you from doing that. Right?
Yeah, and then having the sensors and having actual machine time pass back into the ERP and making variances from that, measurements and things like that, and OEE calculations and everything is something that can be done with today's technology. So that's encouraging with the MES hooking up. But you need the IoT devices and you need communication via the internet between the machines and the software that's actually making products.
5G has made, plant level communication so much more efficient.
Yeah, you don't have to plug in any network cables anywhere. You just use wireless all over the place. So that's really nice. Yeah. So, but I wanted to ask you another question, Vinnie. If you could make C-suite executives, and you're used to talking to them from time of Gartner forward, understand one thing about ERP and enterprise technology, what would it be?
I would say when I was at Gartner, we thought ERP would be 60-70% of the enterprise portfolio, right? Because you could do accounting, you could do sales management, you could do shop floor stuff, you could do warehouse management. I mean, most of the functions ERP could do a reasonably good job. If you look at today's enterprise, especially when you leave manufacturing, ERP only gives them 15 to 20%. So that's the first thing I would tell C-suite executive is lower your expectations of what ERP can do. Okay, SAP likes to talk about clean core, and I tell them the clean core today is only 15 to 20% of the enterprise. Okay, people have been doing in one of my SAP books. I introduced the concept of ring fencing core ERP.
I remember that.
Yeah,
SAP Nation.
Yeah, and people have ring fenced ERP with cloud Salesforce, cloud Workday, a bunch of different. I'm shocked how aggressively people adopted that. Some of them have 70, 80, 90 surround applications. Now they've created a mess. And there's too many, data is very fragmented as a result. But to go back to the C level, it's like ERP will give you core white collar capabilities. Don't expect us to cover, don't buy into it's enterprise wide. So that's one of the first things I would tell them. The other thing I would tell them is automation of the implementation has been very slow. So it's very people dependent. So it's expensive. It's also very risky because, depending on the team you get, you may get a decent project or you may not. I mean, that's been a very frustrating thing is, the integrators, I keep telling them, guys, you've done 100,000 ERP projects. Why aren't you automating more? I mean, all that should be fed into an LLM and generate these.
I could charge more. Can answer that one.
Somebody will commoditize the market if they don't, right? So, but, there should be data conversion tools. There should be code conversion tools. There should be training automation. There should be test automation. It's not rocket science, right? But I would tell C-suite guys, that segment of the market is still very labor intensive. So get ready for that. So those are 2 points I would definitely make.
Yeah, I think I would add that that long term they should have a strategy for going to the cloud because that's the way of the future and that's the way the vendors are forcing them to go. But at the same time, I would count on, given things like resource constraints with SIs and all kinds of different reasons why this progression is happening much more slowly than the vendors would like, right? Is that they can probably hold on to their on-premise for longer, and there's ways to do that with, like a Rimini Street or something like that, right?
That is actually a fascinating comment because if you look at the ERP vendors, I mean, Oracle has had Fusion for a while. Every one of them has a cloud solution. The uptake has been surprisingly low. SAP S/4HANA adoption, only about half of them have even started the journey, right? So you ask, when I talk to people, I go, what's holding you back? Well, first of all, there's the cost of migration.
Cost.
But the second thing is, they'll go, baby, you guys talk about young people don't want to work on ECC or don't want to work on PeopleSoft and so on. We have enough older people who want to retire for 5, 6, 7 years. We can continue to support our applications with that. I always shake my head when I hear that. But how can you argue with it? It's like people who keep the data centers going. They go, it's fully depreciated, man. I don't have to.
Yep.
So
it's running.
It's running.
It's running. Right, we're doing business on it.
Don't fix it, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And then if I just mentioned Rimini Street, but there are a number of vendors that would do that, and that's the big ones, right? That you focus on the SAP ECCs and the Oracle EBS and the monster ones, right? And you
because Rimini or Spinnaker and so on will go on and say, I will support you I'll give you a guarantee, I'll support you for 5, 7, 8 years.
Yep.
There's no gun to the head. And by the way, I can do it for half the cost. In fact, more.
And then Right. And then if you're looking for something to do now, to spend your money on now, if you're talking about manufacturing, look at Smart Factory, look at Industry 4.0, look at IoT devices, look at MES, and do that in the interim. Build those systems out, get your factories running better, and then also look at your customizations, because that clean core concept is based on stripping off, right? I get this right, Vinnie? Stripping off the customizations, essentially replacing them with something, and that something could be microservices and composable applications. Microservices, the way I understand it, is just single applications, and then composable applications are stringing those together into some sort of end-to-end kind of application, that runs on your phone and everything.
It's funny you say that. My colleague at Gartner came up with the concept of service-oriented architectures in 97. So microservices is the modern version of that, right? It's been shown to work. It continues to be, extremely, extremely robust. I hesitate about composable in that you do need applications with functionality, right? We don't have enough of that to cover the whole enterprise. That would be my only answer. Once those start to become available, vertical little edge applications or global edge applications, and you pull that all together, then the composable architecture becomes much more viable. I don't think there's enough applications yet.
Yeah, I think that's beginning. It's definitely beginning. There is probably no appetite amongst those vendors to recreate ERP systems. All they want to do is do things in spots. Certain applications, like when I had Jan on, he was talking about building an application that is a project management application that's all online, that replaces Microsoft projects. So thousands and thousands of Microsoft projects, licenses, applications, and things like that, all replaced by this one online composable application. So
we need hundreds of those, right? Because you can't just survive on project management, or you can't just survive on white collar capability. You need operational capability. That is a constant challenge with the ERP world. Even when you're looking at AI use cases, I've seen plenty of, we'll generate a new employee profile, or we'll do this in your accounts payable area. It's still very white collar focused, right? You go, guys, you're in operational areas, you're on the shop floor, you're in different operational areas. Why aren't you talking about operational use cases? They've been very timid with their generative AI use cases, but that's their comfort zone. They're comfortable in the white collar world. It's a shame, because the opportunities are more in the operational areas.
Have you seen any kind of applications or vendors out there that are doing something really interesting in this area? I mean, you mentioned automation of implementations. That's a very interesting area.
I mean, in the SAP world, I've been studying some of their automation vendors who are automating data conversion, automating code conversion. There's starting to be many of those. But my thought was more around taking customer data, or taking wide pool of data and generating, feeding that to a large language model. And then, when a user says, this is my scenario, AI generates a result, an operational result. Those are still early. You know who's doing that? Customers are doing that internally a lot more than vendors are. Operational.
Really?
Oh yeah.
On the cloud or on premise?
Well,
applications.
They don't want to share it with anybody. So,
okay.
It could be.
They have to kill you
proprietary.
If you found out.
The other thing that's happening, it's early, is customers are realizing they own some really powerful data, and they're saying, "Why don't I monetize it? Why do I just give it to a vendor for them to monetize it?" Right. So we're starting to see some really interesting legal battles emerge where customers say, "Don't touch my data." This could be it's already, the New York Times has sued OpenAI, saying, you've got too much of our content as part of your tokenization process. And OpenAI goes, you've got billions of tokens. What are you talking about? So then back and forth.
Yeah, that's that whole debate of creative humans versus AI, human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. It's a very interesting debate, actually.
Well, I've had some very smart conversations with customer CIOs and so on, and they go, we have molecular data around drugs, we have seismic data around oil fields and all that. Why would I put that in any vendor's cloud? That is so damn lucrative for me to have. Why would I do that, right? So they have a hierarchy of value of data, okay? And product-specific, customer-specific is stuff they want to hang on to themselves. And they'll sell it, they'll monetize it, but for the right price and to the right people. Not just give it to your IT vendor.
All right, great. Well, that's all I had for today. Ryan, what do you think?
Hopefully we covered what you wanted to cover for your audience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely we did. And even some things that I didn't think about covering. So that's great.
Yeah, I'll say I was definitely captured by just how far back you go with ERP and how
I'm not very proud of that, but
I did want to ask you folks, as we did have a question from our Inside Jam community that maybe you could offer some insight on, Dan and Vinnie. The user was wondering, how important is it for end users of an ERP system to pursue upskilling, training programs, official packages that have been put together that help them get more mileage from the platform? Do you see that as being something useful for people, worth their time and money, or is it more an experiential, just get in there and get your hands dirty kind of thing?
I think it's a definite career plus. Sapphire, which is SAP's annual event. I saw a couple of people say that this was the 35th or 40th Sapphire, right? I mean, it's been a livelihood. It's been a career for them. Now, some people will say, yuck, I don't want to be stuck with ERP for 40 years, right? So I think it's if your enterprise, your company is committed to that platform and you see a 5, 10, 15-year run, and that's what you want, absolutely get deep into the product and become an expert in that. You could then market yourself. Your resume will look good. You probably get recruited. There's some other company that uses that product, right? So, yes. Now, is this the funnest part of the IT spectrum to be focused on? ERP is kind of, not. Most young people don't want to sign up for that. So, no, it's been a very good investment of personal time over the last 30, 40 years for sure.
Well, Dan, hopefully Vinnie didn't hurt your feelings there. I was going to ask you if you had any.
No, that we talked about this exact thing on our last episode about the how important it was to upskill and to be ready for the newest that's coming. It's extremely important for your job. And also, I think probably more important now than ever because of AI coming, right? So you want to be very good at what you do. You want to make yourself as indispensable as possible. You can't make yourself completely indispensable in this day and age, but you put yourself in a good spot. And I always used to tell the users when I would come in, when I was doing consulting, I'd go with the finance users, right? Because I was a finance consultant back in those days. And I would, talk to the CFO, to the controller, to the AP clerk, whoever would listen and say, look, I'm here to train you on all the new stuff. And I'm here to make you very useful. And if you're planning on leaving, then fine. You don't have to listen to me, right? I can sweep the floors. It'll probably be pretty expensive sweeping the floors, but I can do whatever you guys want me to do. But what I would like to do is train you guys up so that you're really good at what you do and you position yourself very well to be a key user in the future.
So you see some value there also for companies to bring on experts in training your staff up in
Absolutely.
ERP expertise.
Absolutely.
So I think, Dan we'll wrap it up here, like you said. Dan, where can folks find you outside of this show right here, right now?
Sure. So my company is PCG, and our website is pcgservices, all one word, .com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and I think you will be posting it on LinkedIn and referencing my LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
So you can certainly find me there. And that's about it. We can get in touch.
So Ryan, my company name is Deal Architect, DEAL, Architect. That combined is also my Twitter handle. I'm on LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel. We have an Instagram channel. So I'm fairly easy to find.
Oh, perfect. All right. So yeah, you're taking your own advice, getting out there with the digital marketing. So we'll be sure to link to all of that. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the description below, or check out the show notes. We'll be linking to all of that there. Get in touch with Dan, get in touch with Vinnie. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Dan Aldridge, Vinnie Mirchandani. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for listening to Evolving ERP.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today. Now back to the show.